By the end of this video, we will be able to understand how to write a chemical symbols and formulae. Before going into details, kindly subscribe our channel so you don't miss these interesting factual videos. Today we will discuss how to represent elements using chemical symbols. Understand the basics of IUPAC nomenclature in naming compounds. Use chemical formulae to represent compounds. Did you know? Swedish scientist Jöns Jakob Berzelius introduced the modern system of chemical symbols. He represented the elements using one or two letters from their Latin names, chemical symbols. These are shorthand ways to represent elements in chemistry. Recall that an element cannot be broken down into simpler substances. Each symbol is made up of one or two letters. For example, Na, sodium, the thing here to note is always capitalize the first letter. Let's discuss now the common chemical symbols. Hydrogen. It is derived from the Greek hydro and genes, which means water forming. It is the most abundant element in the universe. Oxygen. Its name comes from the Greek oxy and genes, which means acid forming. It is essential for life. Carbon. It is derived from the Latin carbo, meaning charcoal. It is found in all known life forms. The periodic table of elements. There are 118 chemical elements listed in the periodic table in a specific order. Rules on how to name new elements in the periodic table are set up by the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry, IUPAC. The role of IUPAC. IUPAC is responsible for establishing unambiguous and consistent naming systems, also known as nomenclature, and terminology. It has a system for naming chemical compounds that provides a standard language for scientists worldwide. Naming compounds. A compound is a substance containing two or more elements that are chemically bonded. A chemical formula is an expression showing the elements in a compound and their relative proportions. It contains a combination of chemical symbols and numbers. The chemical formula for carbon dioxide is CO2. What does the formula CO2 mean? Naming ionic compounds. An ionic compound is composed of a metal and nonmetal. Some of the basic rules when naming ionic compounds include: a metal will always come first in a chemical formula, followed by a nonmetal. For example, sodium chloride. An ionic compound with two elements will have a name that ends with "ide." For example, copper sulfide. A compound with three elements, including oxygen, will have a name that ends with "ate" or "ite." For example, sodium sulfate. Naming covalent compounds. A covalent compound has two or more nonmetals. Some of the general rules when naming covalent compounds are: the nonmetal furthest to the left on the periodic table comes first. For example, carbon dioxide. A covalent compound with two elements will have a name that ends with "ide." For example, sulfur dioxide. Use the prefixes mono-, di-, tri-, tetra to indicate the number of that element in the molecule. For example, carbon tetrachloride. Let's review briefly. Chemical symbols. These are shorthand ways to represent elements in chemistry. Each symbol is made up of one or two letters, with the first letter always capitalized. IUPAC nomenclature. IUPAC is responsible for setting up a system of naming elements and compounds, providing a standard language for scientists worldwide. Naming compounds. Compounds are represented by chemical formulae, which use symbols and subscripts. IUPAC sets rules for naming compounds correctly. Thanks for watching. To learn more, just visit and subscribe our YouTube channel. Link in description.